I call the Kitty Hawk Town Council to order this Tuesday, September 8, 2020 at Kitty Hawk Town Hall. The time is now 6:06 according to the wall clock. We're going to have a moment of silence, pledge allegiance, and I'll warn folks ahead of time. This council will use the phrase "under God" when we pledge allegiance. Thank you. Will you join us? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. We are at a point of public comment. Well, no, I need to approve the agenda. Motion to approve, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. Now we're in public comment. I'm going to read into the record a public comment in the hopes that we get this phone situation straightened out. And it comes from Mr. Gary Vodman, and he'd like to have the following read at Town Hall meeting. I would like to request that the town of Kitty Hawk look into the possibility of fixing the issue on the beach road that deals with the sand covering the east shoulder of the road. The shoulder is utilized by walkers and bikers. If you have driven north on the beach road, I am sure that at one time or another you have noticed that due to the sand that is covering the shoulder, both walkers and bikers have to come out onto the road, your right-of-way, and you have to slow or swerve and around the biker or walker. That's the way it was worded. Therefore, we need to eliminate the sand covering the shoulder. I would like to suggest the town put up retaining wall along the east side of Beach Road where it would help keep the shoulder available to the walker, biker, and benefit all. Another item that goes along with this is accessing the beach. There are too many people crossing the beach road from where they are staying and taking a shortcut by climbing up and over the dune, which causes the sand to flow down and out into the road. This needs to stop, and I believe the retaining walls would help. Also, there are places like Sea Dunes, which have a private beach access with lots of client traffic crossing the beach road. They do not have a crosswalk, but should, and I believe they should be responsible for cost of installation. Private beach access on the beach road maintained by an owner should be either wood steps or a ramp that helps maintain the dune side facing the beach road. However, just having a private beach access from your house does not mean they need a crosswalk. Myself and others do stop to let people cross.
Is unlocked.
Myself and others do stop to let people cross to the beach where there is not a crosswalk. I do get frustrated by it as they expect it, and the actual crosswalk is only a couple of houses away or less. Thank you for your time and consideration. Gary Vodman, 106 Captain Hobbs Court, Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, 27949. All right, before I go any further in that, is anyone here for public comment? Lynn?
Yes, sir.
All right. Could I ask you to come up and give us your name, address, and... I'm sorry? Okay.
Good evening. Kurt Basket, resident of 3605 Rabbit Hollow, Kitty Hawk. We're to talk about the proposed drainage pipe leading from the Rabbit Hollow drainage basin into the ditches along Highway 158. I understand that at the closed hearings this evening, we'll be discussing some concerns raised by individuals about whether or not some legal ramifications of the project and also potential health problems of the project. I can't discuss know anything about the legal issues, that's out of my purview. But the health issues, what I'd like to suggest is an alternative that may get this thing constructed and yet the health issues. What we, not myself, we property owners, most of the property owners around the Rabbit Hollow Basin that are being impacted, don't want to have to incur another flood period where this time we would not be able to pump to the ditches when the city is pumping to the ocean. That would appear to be as a potential problem if it was required that the waters be tested while the properties were underwater. We just don't want another period where we're sitting high and dry, not high and dry, low and wet. As an alternative, I throw out, I asked the city to consider taking what I consider a low risk. That is, go ahead, build the project. Once the project is built and the flood does occur, and it will, that at that time, test the waters. Test the waters before the gates are open and see what the health issues are there. Test the waters once the gates are open. Test both the property, the basin, and test the ditches. And once the pumping is concluded and the gates are closed again, test the waters that remain in the ditches to see what the health considerations are there. If at that time it's determined that there are significant health issues, abandon the pipe. I say that's a low risk in my opinion. We've been pumping with and without the city's aid, mostly with the city's allowance, either to the sound or to the ocean for a number of years. To my knowledge, there has never been any indication of adverse impacts to any citizen, any animal, any marine life. I also think it's a low risk because you've got an 8-inch pipe that's going to be flowing into a ditch that's coming both from the south, from the north along 158. It's going to be mixing with water that's coming to the west along West Gateway. It's going to be mixing with water that's coming from the south along 158. So whatever is in the water in Rabbit Hollow is going to be diluted by all these other waters. Also, it is my understanding that the process is the gates to Rabbit Hollow, the gate, the check valve, will not be opened until the pumps are ready to be turned on. Also, it is my understanding that the check valve to the Rabbit Hollow Basin will be closed when the pumps are ready to cease. So whatever waters that are going to remain in the ditches should be very diluted. I think it's going to be a low risk on behalf of the town to go ahead and take that chance, go ahead and build this project. And again, if it's a risk, what you lost is 2 days of water standing in the ditches. And that's about how long it takes to pump out once they turn on and turn back on. Historically, that's how long it's going to take. I understand you've got bigger pumps now, so they should go even faster. We'll see. Anyway, that's my comment. I hope you can consider that. Don't want to see this drug out any longer. Definitely don't want to see us have to wait for the next occurrence of flooding in the area and then have to wait for tests to be made and wait for the results before we can do anything. Because that's going to be worse than it's been in the past. Anyway, thank you for your time, and I'm anxious to hear what the outcome is.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Lynn?
Yes, sir. Chris Effenberger.
Yeah, my name's Chris Effenberger. I live at 117 Central Drive. And most of you don't know me, some of you do. I've lived at 117 Central Drive for 27 years now. And up until Kitty Dunes, really, it was sold. I spent about 20 years pumping water out of Rabbit Hollow. here to thank you for all the work you've done for flood mitigation in this area, or at least helping. I'd also like to thank Willie for all the help he's been. He's been one of the better public works departments since he's been around. I also like to thank Kurt for speaking up for all of us. But just to ask that whatever we can work out to keep this moving forward, see how I can no longer pump because I've lost my place to pump. There's now an office building sitting on that spot, and I no longer have permission. So it's been that way for the past 6 years, so it's been a little trying. Up until that point, we didn't have a problem. I mean, when I got pumped it out, we were good. So anything you guys can do to continue moving this project forward would be great. All right. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Rudy Nuri on 3600 North Portland Highway. I'm in front of Mr. Basket. I'm all about flood mitigation and help, and I appreciate the city's concern to try to help out. As we heard this evening, Mr. Basket admittedly says that there might be issues, and we're counting on diluting these issues with other water. I have no problem with flood mitigation. My biggest concern is I would like to do it in a healthy way. If we know there's issues there, and we're counting on diluting the water, I would like to reconsider this whole issue as far as health-wise to the greater community, rather than one or two properties. Thank you.
Before you go, to install the project requires access across basically an easement. It's a utility easement, correct?
Correct.
And if there's a legal objection to that, then we have a problem doing the project. Since you're part of that easement, what is your feelings, notwithstanding the health issues that you've raised, but what's your feelings, having heard what you've heard, with regard to allowing the town to go across that easement, use it? We don't have any other place to put it.
Your Honor, Mr. Mayor, I have counsel on this issue. I'm not sure if this is appropriate for me to make any comment on that issue. I have referred to my counsel.
All right, well, that's not helpful to us. Thank you. Okay, Lynn?
That's all that is signed up.
That's all that signed up. Anyone listening in that wants to speak at the public comment period? Just to confirm, is anyone listening in? I heard something. Let the record show I'm not getting a response.
Yes.
All right. Okay. I read the comment. Now, I want to address this comment on the beach road. I think we need to do that, don't you?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Willie, are you out there? I'm trying to get Public Works Director in. We have some questions regarding fencing and that sort of thing. In the meantime, Casey, with regard to people crossing the road, I don't have the police chief with me, but with regard to people crossing the road anywhere other than a crosswalk.
Mayor, I'm right here on the line.
Oh, you are? Okay. Well, maybe he can, one of you can answer the question then. And that is, first off, Willie, a crosswalk, designated crosswalk, is done by the state. Is that correct?
On the beach road, that is correct.
Okay. We don't do that.
No, sir.
We can ask for it,
Yes.
but that's the way it happens. All right. Does everybody understand that? All right. Now, with the jaywalking thing, and he didn't call it jaywalking, but basically that's what it amounts to. Chief Johnson,
Yes.
what is the status as far as somebody not using the a crosswalk to cross the beach road to get access to the beach?
So there is a state law in place that's a chapter 20 violation, which is a motor vehicle pedestrian violation, where someone that they're not allowed to stand or walk in the lane of traffic. So to obstruct the flow of traffic. So that's why the crosswalks are there, and that's when they're only legally able to cross the road is at the crosswalks, without cars having to stop. So that is the jaywalking where they're not allowed to interfere with traffic.
All right, but in a practical sense, it's just, you don't have enough cops. I don't think Dare County has enough cops to really control something like that. So in a practical sense, is that even doable to try to stand out there and somehow direct that kind of foot traffic from the west side to the east side?
No, sir. It's impossible.
Okay, all right. Now, the next item is, and this is where Willie comes in, fencing, some sort of a retaining wall or something. The fact is we have blowing sand. The fact is Kitty Hawk is kind of unique in so many ways, but in this particular case, we've lost our beach through the erosion many, many times. We now have a dune. The dune was built very close to the road because of CAMA requirements. Am I correct?
Mostly, yes, sir.
Okay. And then when we added sand and all that sand blew over, that is a constant source of replenishing the sand that then creeps up onto the Highway 12. And we have to clean it out. Now, the state is actually responsible for that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. But you sometimes do it when it gets a little bit out of hand and they're too busy.
Yeah, I'll go down. The biggest, the biggest issue for us is at the beach access points, and as the guy stated, as people walk across, the sand does push out into the road. So at least once a week, it gets pushed back into the access. Can't take the sand away because council does not allow it. It has to remain in the system.
Yeah, it has to be put back.
It has to be put back on the beach at some point.
Right.
Now, they don't restrict us to putting it right there, but it still has to go on the beach.
Understood.
Now, the state has had some equipment issues and personnel issues and budget issues this summer, which is great. They don't do it as well as they did, and I got an email from him today saying that they understand and they will try to do better. Last fall, they did, through the section north of Black Pelican and in that area, they did move a lot of sand, and they put it on the beach there. And they got some complaints, but overall, I think it helped some. If they didn't move it at all, it'd be out to the center line right now.
Well, if it didn't move it at all, we've got a lane on the west side that people would have to use.
The dune has migrated itself.
Yes.
It's really gotten close.
Well, we're not doing away with the dune.
No, sir.
Anybody want to do that? No, I don't think so.
It's going to keep moving.
All right.
It's going to keep the dune.
That's right. Now, I'm not sure who to ask this question of, maybe you, Casey. Where people from the west side cross over dunes, there are paths and things of that nature. If the town doesn't own that, do we have any say over it?
I suppose it would depend. I do think we have an ordinance regarding destruction of dunes and things of that nature. So, but it would if there's a path, then you're not destroying anything. So, and it would, as you said, if it's not a public access where we hold fee simple title to the land itself, whether it's an unbuildable lot, as all of ours essentially are now, it would be a private property issue. Unless, of course, there was some form of destruction that was occurring as they were crossing the dune. At that point, I think we could probably get involved. But in terms of the private property owners who, and many, and I know this just from my private practice, many people are going and buying these unbuildable lots for the sole purpose of they own a lot across on the west side of Highway 12 and they want to get to the beach. So they're going and paying a couple $1,000 for these unbuildable lots just so they can cross over, so they can walk over, as you were saying, their own property. So there is certainly an enforcement issue at play in terms of trying to regulate usage of those particular areas. Absolutely.
Okay. Now let's talk about fencing. There's two kinds that were addressed here. Let's talk about sand fencing first. Where you sand fence is solely for the purpose of trying to catch sand. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Now, there are places where the top of the dune has been fenced, which would in effect catch sand and also prevent egress across that dune.
Yes, sir.
Have you ever done private property that way?
When we first started the sand fence project, we requested permission to do it on all the properties along the oceanfront. And some people gave it to us, some people didn't. So most of the properties do have some sort of sand fence, if there's space for it. Like the unbuildable lots, like most of them do have some sort of sand fence. It's not, don't have the stuff running north and south like we do along the distress section, or at Wilkins. And that, most of that is there to keep people from crossing.
But they gave permission, a private property owner gave
They
permission
did.
to do that. We didn't do that to deter public access.
No, sir, we did it, Bill Doon.
Okay, all right. Everybody got that? Okay. All right, then the retaining wall on the east side of 12. Is any council member in favor of that?
No. Yes, sir.
All right, that's a dead issue. All right. Did I answer all the man's questions?
If I could comment in, I received quite a few complaints where, like at the Black Pelican access, at the beach access, when you go across, you're basically on the beach. Where if you get to Maynard Street, the access cuts through the dune line, and then you could spread out and go to the beach in several different directions, going across private property. And those people were complaining to the north and south, where the path is so long, and the sand fence had built up a nice dune, and they just cut between the sand fences, and the kids are playing up on top of the dunes. I spoke with Andy, and Andy went and on the access property, put the sand fencing straighter and longer so that it directed them in the direction instead of letting them fan out on the beach. And that corrected that problem really well. And so I was just, there, when we have situations, that's the second dune that's been created by the sand fence, not the actual front one. That did, we didn't go on private property, and I put them in contact with Better Beaches that have signs that they have baby dunes, and you can, I think they give them to you, or you can donate and place them on your private property. So
Okay.
that helps him in any
All right.
kind of way.
And so when we have someone that's got a problem, you're trying to take care of it,
Yes,
and we're also not infringing on property rights, and we're not here to deny people access to the beach from wherever they come.
correct.
All right.
And we're trying to maintain it as we go, so, it's gonna, hopefully, as it has, it's getting higher. And we're adding sand fence all the time, it's always in the same.
Yeah, it's up and it's close because that sand's blowing, but I'm not ready to take it away from there. All right, I would ask you this. The state spends an awful lot of time down on Hatteras Island trying to keep all that mess clear. So they really only have a certain number of people. And it is unreasonable to expect them to be up here day in and day out. Is that something you can take on to kind of help out a little bit there?
I do at times, they'll call me, if there's a reason they can't get up, they usually will call and say, we're not gonna be able to get there. Can you push up some of the sand? And I will.
Do you have to wait for their call?
No, I don't. And if it's bad, I have done it in the past anyway.
Yeah, okay.
Especially the bathhouse.
We all agree?
Willie, I know, because I've come out early a lot of mornings and I've seen you out making your rounds. Just for the record, that is part of your regular right every morning down in C12 looking in the sand on the road.
If it's not there every morning, I'm there the next one or the afternoon.
Yes, sir.
So I'm gonna be on that road at some point in the day.
I've seen you, buddy. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else got something to add with this particular issue?
I just think, I see joggers and people walking in the morning. It can get kind of dangerous for them on that road.
Yeah. Well, we don't have a true path.
No, I get it.
If you, it's dangerous on West Kitty Hawk Road.
Right,
That's not near wide enough, but there is a limit to where we can go.
right.
So the uniqueness of Kitty Hawk dictates that sometimes people have to be careful. And Kitty Hawk's one of those places. Enjoy it for the uniqueness it is, but be aware that we can't fix everything out there. It's just the way it is. All right, enough said. Let's move on.
Thank you, Willie.
Thank you, Willie. Thank
Willie.
you, Joel. I appreciate it. Thank you, Casey. All right. Anybody else? Now that we have phone, and we know we have phone, is anybody wanting to do the public comment? Let the record show I heard nothing. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
I move we
You move?
approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a second. Did you get all that, Lynn?
Yes, sir.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. We had nothing removed. Next, we have a public hearing, and it has to do with land disturbance. All right. I'm going to make a motion, we go into public hearing.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are now in public hearing. And there's something I want to add for the record that we need to consider as we go into this public hearing and you do what you got to do. This has to do with height. And in the town of Kitty Hawk, well, the town of Kitty Hawk right this year is 39 years young. And before the town became a town, there was height issues that were encountered by the county. So height has been an issue for the town of Kitty Hawk now and past. And it's important to understand, if you go back in the records, and we have the records, throughout that history of 50-some years, height was an issue for the people of town of Kitty Hawk from ground to somewhere at whatever the height was. Had nothing to do with building a house, 3 floors, 2 floors, vaulted ceilings, or 35 foot high. I did notice that the planning board said, you know, now everybody can build a house 35 foot high. Had nothing to do with all the contests that's gone on through the years up until present. And the reason I raise that for the record is what we are considering tonight changes history. So if we do what's been asked of us tonight, then we've changed what everybody in the past has been adamant not be done, and that's 55 feet. It started out at 25 feet when the county had it. 25-foot lots, 25-foot height, a flat roof would do it, a house on wheels would do it, those sort of things. And then, to my surprise, when I did research, the raising of houses on stilts had nothing to do with flood damage prevention. They didn't even have the rules at the time. It had to do with people wanting to build a house. They had more than one car. People are getting more affluent. And they needed a place to park it on a small lot. So raise the house. That's when 35 feet started coming into being. It got settled at 35 feet back when the Hilton was a big point of contention. Essentially, everybody said, we don't want to have all the zones be able to go to 55 feet or whatever they were looking at the time. What we want is to keep it at 35 feet. But they didn't have an objection to the hotel per se. So they carved out an exception, and that's how that happened. So for the record, right now, we're being asked to change history. And I'll leave it at that, and we'll listen to what's presented to us, and I think we'll find maybe history needs to be changed. So on us. All right? Rob, please.
All right. So the proposed text amendments would change section 42-1, definition of ground elevation. It's proposed to say that it means the mean elevation of the final grade computed at the perimeter of the proposed building's foundation or piling location, as opposed to elevation of the undisturbed land that it currently states. The second part of it is under Town Code, section 12-141. And it would state that fill shall not be permitted to exceed the established regulatory flood protection elevation, the fill height required by Dare County Environmental Health Department for septic purposes, or 6 inches above the adjacent road surface, whichever is the highest. It would continue to state, as it does now, that interference with the flow of surface water shall not be unreasonable so as to cause harm and substantial damage to other property or public rights of way. And unreasonable use and substantial damage may subject the owner or possessor to a civil action for injunctive relief and damages. So kind of how we got here today, back in March, we adopted the new flood damage prevention ordinance and the new maps. As a part of that, we changed the reference level to the bottom of the lowest floor instead of the top of the lowest floor, which it was under the previous ordinance. So doing that kind of took away possibly up to a foot. The reference level being that the floor system now has to be above the RFPE, so the floor joists and all where they previously could have been below. So you're kind of losing a foot of functional height with that. So as I stated, we kind of, right now, we measure the 35-foot height maximum from average original grade. So when someone comes in with a site plan, they'll have their proposed house and elevation shots of the four corners of where the house is going to be. We take an average of those 4 shots, and they get 35 feet from there to the peak of the roof. Let's see. With, in addition to the reference level changing, the AO flood zone has impacted it to a kind of a greater degree. Regardless of the ground elevation in the AO zone, the RFPE is 3 feet above the highest adjacent grade to the proposed structure. So for an example, if your existing grade is 9 feet, NAVD, and it's a North American vertical datum, the bottom of your lowest floor must be at 12 feet minimum. If your existing grade is 12 feet, then the bottom of your lowest floor must be at 15-foot minimum to be compliant with the flood ordinance. So with this, you know, you're pushing the floor up, but the roof peak is kind of staying the same, so it's getting kind of crunched in. Should be noted, as you've mentioned, that there have been previous applications to increase the maximum building height in the past. They've been denied for various reasons, but typically cited that 35 feet from original grade was felt to be the appropriate height for Kitty Hawk, which is kind of what the mayor mentioned before we started. So the difference now, I guess, is the flood damage prevention ordinance is kind of taking away that extra foot that was available before. And likewise, it should be noted that in 2009, council discussed an ordinance that would regulate fill. They ultimately adopted the existing language in 12-141. Council at the time felt that the town should not be policing how much fill that property owners wanted to put on their lot. As the ordinance is currently written, like I said, we don't limit any type of fill. There's just that caveat that if you bring in so much fill that it damages adjacent property, that it could be subject to civil suit between the property owners for the damages and relief. But the other side of that is for every foot of fill you bring in, you're losing a foot of usable building height too, because you're still capped at that 35 feet from original grade. When this application came in, I recommended to the applicant that if this was to be approved to allow the measurement from finished grade, that we probably would want to put a cap on fill, as the applicant proposed the 3 separate ones, just to avoid the potential of the ordinance being abused, somebody bring in 10 feet of fill because they have a wide lot and it wouldn't impact their neighbors. So, and linked to the 2009 discussion about fill requirements was stormwater management. The idea had been discussed for this proposal to include some type of threshold that if the fill exceeded a certain amount, that an engineered stormwater management plan would be required to ensure that adjacent properties would not be negatively affected. Ultimately, it was decided to omit any specific stormwater management requirements for this proposal. We don't currently regulate stormwater management for single-family residences. And in 2009, it seemed to be council's preference that we would not be policing stormwater issues as well. Additional consideration was given to the fact that the town, since we don't have anyone that's really qualified to review stormwater management plans on staff. If we require it for single-family homes, each one that would come in would possibly have to be sent out to a third-party engineer to review to make sure that it would comply, which would add cost to the property owners and time to the review time. So the issues with the current procedure of measuring building height from the average original grade are not only linked to the flood damage prevention ordinances. There have been several instances where either by natural occurrences or due to the development of surrounding lots, a vacant lot has been left in a hole. At times, significant amounts of fill have been required to bring the building pad level with adjacent lots.
All participants have been muted.
Sorry. So when you're done, when you want to comment, just hit 9.
Okay.
Or even with the adjacent road surface, which in turn, again, shrinks the usable height of the new house. Or if they want to keep that 35 feet that's available to them, they end up building kind of in a hole and can get flooded out and in regular rainstorms, taking the runoff from adjacent properties. One concern that has been brought up with the proposed text amendment is that it may allow for new construction to be significantly taller than existing homes. With the proposed fill limitations, most areas of town, I think that concern would be kind of minimal. The proposed language would limit the fill height to either RFPE, 6 inches above adjacent road elevation, or the amount of fill required by the health department for septic. In most of the areas east of 158, the existing grade is within 2 or 3 feet of the RFPE, and the lots are relatively even with the roadway. So in most cases, under this proposed language, the lots kind of between the highways and even kind of like the seascape and all, you'd be looking at maybe a 3 to 4 foot difference from what they're allowed now. And the majority of the X zone properties are at an elevation that's higher than 8 feet, which is the newly created RFPE for X zones. So fill would only be permitted on X zone properties if it was above 8 feet to bring it to 6 inches above the adjacent road or up to the elevation or the level required by the health department. So it'd be minimal in those areas as well. One area that stuck out to me that may cause some concern with it would be in lower lying areas of the village. For example, in the Landing, existing grade is typically around 3 to 4 feet, and the RFPE is 8 feet back there. So with this proposal, you're allowing 4 to 5 feet of fill, and then measuring 35 feet from there. So with 5 feet to get it up to that 8-foot elevation, you're looking at a 40-foot tall house from original grade versus 35. So you're looking at additional 5 feet. But it should be noted for the runoff concerns that currently if somebody wanted to go back there and add 5 or 6 feet of fill on any given lot, they'd be allowed to do it. They just can't damage their adjacent property, and it would shrink the size of their house if they brought that much fill in. You can see in the staff report, a copy of what some of the other towns in Dare County are doing regarding building height. And I attached to your staff report, just so everybody would have some of the background, an excerpt from the January 5th, 2009 discussion on fill and stormwater management for single-family residences, an excerpt from the May 4th, 2009 public hearing on building height, and then another excerpt from the May 19th, 2009 workshop and the referenced attachments that were in there. Also wanted to just pull up a couple of pictures regarding the buildings being excessively tall over existing ones. You can see on the left of this picture, this is one that was built recently to the 35 feet from original grade, and how it relates to the older house next door. If this proposal were to be approved, and if this was a vacant lot next door, this house may expect a house to be 2 or 3 feet taller than it. So it wouldn't necessarily allow new construction to tower over any houses that are built to the maximum of what's allowed today, but they would be likely towering over some of the single-story beach boxes from the 70s and 80s, but they already are doing that with some of the newer construction today. And here's another example on the beach road out here. And then this one was sent to me. This is one of the situations where the adjacent properties had kind of built up on the sides, and the lot was lower than the roadway. So to get that full 35 feet, they were kind of built more in a hole a little bit, and you can see when a significant rainfall occurred, there was runoff just flowing from the street straight back to the garage of the new construction. And then this one was sent over the weekend. By one of the local builders. And this was an example he showed. Over to the right side of the photo, you can see, it's kind of hard to see on the picture, but the grade slopes up, and this is where the septic area is. And to get their building height, they actually have the exposed sewer line above the adjacent grade, because if they had filled all of the building pad to meet the septic area, they wouldn't have been able to get the house built the way they had it designed. And there's another photo that he submitted showing the couple, 3 feet or so of fill being brought on a vacant lot and sloping right up to the property line. That's really all I've got. If there's any other questions, I think there was 2 other pictures that he had. Part of the letter that was submitted along with these photos suggested that maybe we allow the fill up to the level of the septic area, but restrict it to filling the septic area and the house pad area. That way it's not going straight up to the property lines and dropping off. And in some sense that makes some sense. It would prevent some of the concerns from the neighbors when they see the fill being brought in for their neighbor's new house. But after a discussion with the applicant this afternoon on that, he brought up the example that, okay, so if, say the health department requires 30 inches of fill for a septic tank, over on the beach road, we have a lot of cases where we have the house closer up front, and then the pool, and then the septic area in the back. So we would have, the driveway coming in low, and then 30 inches to the house, and then go back down for the pool, and then 30 inches for the septic area, which might get a little odd looking after house develops like that. So it's just something to consider.
That septic line encased in concrete bollards there kind of blew me away. That one caught me totally by surprise. I had no idea that something like that was being built. So I appreciate Randy Saunders bringing that to our attention, because the septic systems are having as much to do as flood prevention in what we're discussing. All right. Now, you want to ask him some questions, or wait until we hear from comment? I think we have several.
I'd wait.
Okay. All right. Lynn?
Yes. Jay Overton?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Jay Overton with Albemarle and Associates. I reside back in Collington Harbor. Been there for about 30 years. Seeing a lot of these changes like you're mentioning tonight, sir. As Rob's already done a great job of outlining how we got here, and mainly with the flood ordinance, brought this to our attention back in March. But as many of you have lived here all your lives and seen a lot of things change, and we're seeing things change as well. You mentioned just a few minutes ago about the septic systems. Some of you may be aware, others may not, but the health department had a few years ago an audit by the state where they started requiring the health department to come up with greater fill requirements. Now we're having to do these Brunswick systems. There's a lot of little thing here, a little thing there, and next thing we know, they're adding up and they're affecting the lives of our community. And that's, I think, what y'all are realizing with the new flood ordinance and other things that you're considering constantly, that y'all have that oversight duty to make sure that we all are being serviced correctly and safely. And when we're looking at flood waters, One of the things that we've been seeing a lot of is not so much just the houses flooding, but it's the cars and the other things you mentioned about putting them up on pylons so that folks could have a place to park their cars. I don't think the first folks who did that envisioned that we'd end up with 2 or 3 feet of floodwater underneath of the houses. So that's a lot of what we're dealing with. So looking at the ability to refine what we're doing for the betterment of our community is where we're seeing this request for how we measure the height. It's not a desire to have larger houses like you talked about, Mayor. It's to keep things where they are, but that baseline, what do we need to do in site preparation to better manage our stormwater, better manage our septic systems, to better protect personal properties and lives is really where this is coming from. And as we look at modifying that initial ground, if we're able to allow the measurement to occur from that modified ground, it then gets us into what Kitty Hawk had. I commend you because having to deal with all 8 municipalities, it's refreshing to come back to Kitty Hawk and even like what I was reading in the fill ordinance where we're putting the responsibility on the property owner. It's your responsibility to make sure that what you're doing, you're not going to adversely affect your neighbor. I think all too often I want government to be out of my life until I want government to go make my neighbor do what I want him to do. And to put that here in writing to make sure that people understand from the beginning, you're responsible for your actions and how you affect your neighbor is very important. Rob and I, when we were talking about this, you know, we all need to have parameters. We all need to have some type of idea. And right now with our with our fill ordinance, it basically says you're responsible. And I don't know that we've seen anybody want to put 8 or 10 feet of fill on a property. But what we're finding now is in order to get the properties up higher so that we're protecting for these other issues, there's going to be the need to do that. So the question's going to be asked of the property owners, well, what's a good guideline? What's a good place to start? Well, the health department, you've got to have the 24 inches and you've got to have the 30 inches. We just passed a new flood prevention ordinance, which we went through and we saw what FEMA came out with, but in spite of what FEMA said, as a community, all the towns got together and said, what have we seen as a flood elevation? Where have we routinely seen flooding? What would be that minimum elevation we would want to construct to so that we don't have adverse situations most of the time? We're not going to be able to make sure we build to where when the great flood comes through here that we don't have some water. But we picked an elevation. And that was based upon trying to help the property owners understand that parameter. And another thing that I've just always, anytime that we've done anything with subdivisions, whether it's been here on the Outer Banks or inland and other areas, you want your property to be above your road. You don't want your public water. Willie doesn't want to have to be dealing with public water draining on the private property. We talked about that a little bit earlier this evening. That's a issue that's going on, and we want to prevent that. So giving this type of guidance in the fiddle was not trying to make people do that, but it was trying to give some common sense parameters on this. So if it was the town's desire to say, we want to even be less in people's business, we don't want to give those 3 parameters, we just want to keep it where you're just responsible for yourself and what you do to your neighbor, and we didn't have anything in the way of fill restrictions, but we were allowing the height to be measured from the final grade. I don't know that that gives anyone any cause to have concern, but at some point someone's going to ask Rob, well, what do I do? You know, how much is a good amount? And I think these are some good parameters here that we could be looking at. And the final thing, I know you talked about history, Mayor, and You know, the town is full of history, and at the same time as you go through and you look at history, there have been milestones along that path in which decisions were made. And they were made not because we're going to live in the past, but because we're looking at what we have walked through in the past, what we have experienced. And from that, we see that there are some refinements that we can make that would make life better for the residents of Kitty Hawk. And I see this as one of those things. We're another one of those milestones in which we can refine this and we can make it even better for the citizens. So with that, I thank you. If y'all have any questions for me, I'll be hanging around to answer them if I can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lynn?
Who would like to go next? Anyone? Duke?
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Duke Garrity. I'm with the Outer Banks Home Builders Association, and I have a little bit of history too. I remember sitting in this room and sitting upstairs with Richard Reed, putting the last major zoning ordinance together, going over parking regulations. Everybody had a fear of these mini hotels, and I hate that word. But the mini hotels, so we got to do something before they start coming in. And we tried to keep it as simple as we could, and I think Kitty Hawk has done that. They've done a great job with that. But some things change. One is price. You're paying a lot of money for a lot, and you want to justify the price that you just paid for your property. Now, you need a house a little bit different. And again, I don't want to talk about 12, 15, 20-bedroom homes, but a 4-bedroom or 5-bedroom family home that you want 9-foot ceilings now. You can build a house right now with 8-foot ceilings. It's obsolete before you finish with it. People want 9-foot ceilings. You need a little bit more height. We've had the health department change their specifications. The water separation from the water table used to be 18 inches. It was common to put 24 inches of fill. Well, the health department changed their determination. They said we need 30 inches of separation. And that may change again if we continue to see any kind of sea level rise. 2011, Hurricane Irene. I have a very good friend who's in the audience tonight. She sold her house recently on Pine Way, Kitty Hawk Landing, and getting ready to build another house on Tarco Ridge. They got flooded for the second time. She had to change all the insulation. All the stuff in the garage was flooded out because the house was built too low. Another foot of fill would have been fine. It would have saved the property. It wouldn't have had the damage and the cost they incurred to do that for the second or third time. And we're trying to take preventive measures for that next time when we start the new house. This is not a builder issue. This is for the citizens of your town. They deserve. We can't keep making the same mistakes and going through the same flood issues that we've had in the past. So Jay covered everything pretty good, as thorough as he always is. I don't want to repeat anything, but I'm hoping that you pass this ordinance tonight. It's very simple. We don't want to, and I would hope that most people will build and just not flood it from property to property with fill. You need to keep your water on your property. It's been a very basic thing we've said, but take care of your own water. Don't dump it on your neighbor's house. And I'm hoping through education and through getting the building permit process, you can reiterate that you have to do it. But to bring the fill up to at least get higher than the street, let's make some common sense. We don't have the problems you have between the highways now. We don't have that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. When you did a 9-9,
It'll unmute it. They can hear you when you hit 9.
they can hear me now.
They can hear you now, but they can't talk.
Okay. Yeah, and we were getting noise.
You're muting them, yes.
Okay. That's all I needed to know. All right, next.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Dave Stormock. I've been a property owner here in Kitty Hawk since 1995. Built a business back here over the years. I'm here to ask that you approve this recommendation tonight. With respect to the fill is controlled by height of street, septic ordinances, stormwater runoff considerations for neighbors, The floodplain, the flood maps have changed the way we measure from the floors, from, as Rob pointed out, from top of floor, now it's bottom of floor. Basically, I just see that this is a positive thing for the community going forward. I don't see, I see it as a win-win. I don't see a downside to being able to measure from finished grade versus natural grade. I think it's a positive thing. I'd like to see it so that we don't continue to have, as well pointed out, that we don't continue to have the repeating flood issues that we've had with stormwater and some ocean overwash. So thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Who's next?
My name is Blair Meads. I am a resident of Kitty Hawk as well as I'm a builder. I'll keep this short. I just recently developed some properties on Lindbergh, and they were six lots side by side. 2 lots worked out to be above the street level, and 2 lots worked out to be about 6 or 8 inches below the street level. Those 2 properties, you know, in heavy rains, water will run off the street down to the lower level. And if I'd have just been able to put 8 to 10 inches of fill on those properties, they would have had the same value as the adjacent properties, and it would have made them much more suitable, and I'd have been able to protect those properties in a much better way. I feel like that this text amendment is a responsible way. It encourages people to protect their property, but also to protect their neighbors. And I hope that you will consider this a good amendment for our town.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Vaughn Robinson. I am the current president of the Outer Banks Home Builders Association, and I am in favor of the text amendment for how for how height is measured. I hope you all approve this text amendment. I've been getting a lot of calls from builders in the area wanting to know what was going to go on with the height and the way height was measured, and also some contacting me about issues as far as them being forced to build at a lower level. The way that you currently measure the height from the existing grade. So I hope y'all, I would like for y'all to approve the proposed amendment change. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name's Keith Doby. Thanks for letting me speak for a minute. I just wanted to talk about a specific project that I've been working on the beach road, or trying to work on, just to give some context. It's right on the beach road. It's an older house, 1-story, up on pilings, and the homeowner decided it was not really worth saving, so they decided to knock it down. So I went, got the demo permit. Jeff helped me design plans for it. You know, all would work under the last regulations, be permitted, everything. Got the house demoed, go in March to get the permit for a house that previously was totally fine, not allowed to build it because of the new flood maps and the flood zone, which, okay, no problem. I assume we'll meet the flood regulations and then just build the exact same house. And because they weren't being adopted till June, weren't allowed to permit it, so that house is kind of in limbo right now. And just to give some context, it's the exact same house that would have been built previously. It's just that now, because of the new flood regulations, and the people, you know, the homeowners know they need to bring in fill or elevate a little bit because that's what it is. They're willing to spend the money, but they've just been in limbo since they started this process in the fall, starting to design their house. And there's no house there now. It's an empty lot, and they haven't been able to use it all summer. So just wanted to give that context for one specific project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And while I'm waiting for the next gentleman to come up, I want to thank each of you for taking the time to come and speak to us direct. This thing is fine, but it's not the same. Thank you for coming.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Jake Overton. I'm a Kitty Hawk resident. I'm also a builder. I just want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you for a moment. I am in favor of this text amendment. When we go in and looking at a piece of property for with my builder hat on for a customer, we're looking at a couple of different things with that piece of property. What's the adjacent properties look like? Where are we at with the road? And then what is the health department going to require based upon how high we are from the water table? So we all deal in all these different towns and in multiple counties. And it excites me a little bit because it's something that's very simple and it's very practical in what we're doing every day. We're looking at trying to still maintain proactiveness and working with the surrounding lot owners, but then also being able to build so that we're meeting those requirements of the health department and also the road. One of the reasons that I've decided now to have my family raised in Kitty Hawk is because of the nostalgia and the history of it. We see so much other stuff going on around in the county, and I feel like that even though times have changed, you as a council and the mayor still have that open mind that we want to try to keep Kitty Hawk the way it was, but some things we have to change in order to deal with the surrounding issues that we're dealing with. So I'd just like to thank you for the opportunity for talking and hope that you would consider approving this text amendment tonight. So,
Thank you. Anybody? Have we got everybody?
Carlos.
Oh. Didn't recognize you with your mask on and your shorts.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Members of the board. I'm Carlos Gomez, President of Coastal Engineering Surveying. We're engineers and construction managers. Coastal has been over 30 years in Kitty Hawk. We're right there on the bypass, Milepost Street. And all 31 years almost. And this has been a consistent issue through the years. And it's a minor thing that creates so many issues for everybody. There are many good reasons about the 35 feet. For homeowners, structural engineers, architectural designers, home designers dealing with aesthetics. Issues with wind erosion, that was an issue, why it's been considered in so many other communities. Before we were so green, signs blew all over the place. They create less amount of erosion. Has been studied by other people. Town of Kitty Hawk has got its own rules on how it arrives to elevations, but they are. There's reasons for the ability to park underneath the buildings, flood protection, and so on. 35 feet requirement is for most of it's common for most of the communities on the East Coast, all the way from New England to Texas. It's very consistent. So this issue is not about the elevation, but how we measure. We're not changing the 35 feet essentially. It's how you measure. And there's so many issues that are creating a problem of how we look at it. But we're not changing the 35 feet. We're sticking with the 35 feet. It's not we're going 40 or we're going to mean roof elevation like other counties do it, but just how we measure to the ground level. My belief again is not that we're going to change something that is important, like the 35 feet, but how the metrics work. What's the relationship? What is relative? Most of the buildable lots left in Kitty Hawk, obviously they could be rebuilt, but most of them are low. And they have issues with water. Those are the lots that are left behind. That now, because of the search and everything, and because eventually they will be developed, they need fill. They need fill for several reasons. They're lower than the street, the groundwater table It's not where we would like it to be, so the whole department now requires 2-3 feet of fill, which I don't know when you guys go to Hatteras, you see these houses with the septic tanks above grade and the septic fields high and the sewer line coming up high, like one of the pictures we saw there. And that's so notable. Going on the original grade has been a struggle for contractors, for architects and engineers. Architects have to deal, and designers have to deal a lot with it. Because if you want to bring the house up for some reason, the roof comes down and it has to be flatter. You see a lot of that in Southern Shores, it's so common. And if you're on one side of the street, like they were talking about a minute ago, you could see houses with very nice roofs on one side, and on the other side they're flat. It works that way. I've seen it through the years. So what tends to be over 35 feet is a little section of the roof, the ridge. I could see that some houses will be flat, but we don't have many houses with flat roofs here, and I don't think that's something that we're going to be seeing. You're seeing in Southern Shores, but typically it's just maybe a foot or two of the roof ridge, and it's such a minor thing. Interestingly is that if you have a house that's going to be 24 feet designed from ground level to the ridge, you could feel almost 10 feet underneath the house. So again, it's the metrics. Flatter roofs are an issue. It's very hard to notice a ridge that sticks a foot over the other or 2 feet. You don't really see it. But when we as surveyors have to certify that it's over 35 feet, 35 feet 1 inch is too much. And depending on where you measure it, it's crazy. And it's very simple to design to that grade. And you can adjust that grade. It's nearly impossible to adjust a ridge without coming at a chainsaw and cut a foot of a roof or something. Shouldn't be a mistake, or just having to deal with it. Make sure you adjust it during construction, because a lot of times they cut during construction, and then you start changing roof heights and all that. That's just my practical sense of seeing it as an engineer. Here, do you have any questions? Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is anybody else in the hall that, no, all there? Andy, I need to do 9-9 to undo this. Let me get this thing down here. I'm about to do 6-6.
All participants have been unmuted.
All right, I understand you folks could hear us, and we're at a point now, I'm asking, is there anyone that's been listening that wants to speak on the subject matter of this hearing? Anyone at all? Let the record show I'm not getting a response. So I'm going to do one more thing before we close out. If anybody's listening, please mute your particular phone. That's why we had to cut you off a while ago. Randy Saunders brought to our attention the picture you see, and I'm going to read what he has because he's recommending a change, and I have to ask the attorney if something like that could be done. Dear Mayor and board members of Town of Kitty Hawk, I am contacting you today concerning the upcoming request changing the way we measure the height of our new homes from original grade to measuring the height from finished grade. I am a Kitty Hawk property owner and a builder who has been building on the Outer Banks for over 40 years. In my opinion, I feel we need to change the way we measure to allow the home to be brought up 24 to 30 inches, all depending on what the health department is requiring for fill. And this is where you're going to come in, Casey. It has been the policy of the Dare County Health Department in the past couple of years to require at least 24 to 30 inches of fill for lots that cannot meet the 36-inch requirement to the average water table. In doing so, the health department also requires the septic tank be set flush with the top of the fill. Unfortunately, this causes a couple of problems. First of all, the main sewer lines leading from the house to the sewer tank being exposed and creating a tripping hazard, as you will see in the picture that is now before the screen. I took this picture of a house in Kitty Hawk Landing. The sewer pipe is unsightly for one and a hazard sticking above ground. I do not feel Town of Kitty Hawk wants this for future homes built when we can solve it with simply allowing the builder to raise the house the same as the fill level so that the main sewer line will be hidden under the soil as not be a hazard for someone to trip on or worse. I feel we should allow the owner to fill under the house and around the perimeter of the house 36 to 48 inches, then slope the fill to a 2-to-1 slope, leaving the remainder of the property at original grade, so we will not be directing our water runoff toward our neighbors. I have attached pictures as an example of a home we are currently building. As you can see, we only filled under the house and out around 36 to 48 inches. The remainder of the lot, with the exception of the small drain field area, will remain at original grade for water runoff, not affecting our neighbor on either side of us. I do not feel the entire lot should be filled and cause a problem for our neighbors. I have also included a picture of a lot just down the street that has been completely filled and will certainly cause problems for the adjoining neighbors. Rob, put that, oh, okay, you're doing it, thank you. Hopefully you will be able to adopt this new ordinance change with these modifications. All right, there's your question. The text amendment before us has specifics. He's recommending an alteration to those specifics. I know that when you do a text amendment like we're doing here, if you make too much of a change, then you have to go through the whole process. Please bring us up to date.
So, in general, I think the point of the text amendment, it looks like Randy's proposing essentially bring it up to where, let's measure from wherever Dare County Health and Human Services requires fill to be brought in for septic purposes. But that's not really answering the question or dealing with the problem that a lot of folks are talking about today, which is, well, even if we do that, what if it's still below the road? So the house itself and the measuring point from where we're measuring that 35 feet. So I would say that in particular, if we were to remove that language regarding the whichever is higher point in regards to where it's at from the road, where we're measuring from the road, where the Dare County Health and Human Services require for septic, then I think it's a substantial deviation. The slope requirements, that's another issue. And I would say this, we've got the applicant in attendance. So if the applicant would allow and approves the variation, then we could certainly consider it. If the applicant does not, however, then it becomes an issue where we're got what's before us and we're not supposed to make deviations that are of a substantial nature. And I think that the slope issue and then taking out the whichever is higher standpoint, I think both of those would be substantial in the event the applicant doesn't agree.
Okay, that's what I thought. While I have you folks here, how many of you would like to see Randy's recommendation go forward, which means we'd have to do this all over again, basically go back to square one. But how many of you would like to see that happen? Please raise your hand. No one's raising their hands. All right, so that becomes a non-issue as far as, I think, where we're going with this. But everybody understands what just happened?
Yes, sir.
Substantial change, we can't do that without either the applicant's permission or going through the whole process again. All right, thank you. Thank you, Casey. That was my question. It's answered well. All right, I don't have anybody else for the hearing. I don't, counsel, before we do any deliberation, which we, by the way.
You do have somebody.
What?
I have just one question. And I hate to do Rob, but Rob is, when Rob is in the middle of all this, with all contractors, all engineers, all architects, and I would like to know what you would like to say about it. I mean, if you have an opinion.
Yeah, I think the proposal has got its merits. You know, like the picture here really illustrates, you know, kind of the issue that our current method of doing it can create. You know, nobody wants their sewer lines exposed in their parking pad under their house. And this picture, sometimes it seems like, you know, in some of the flatter areas or areas that have been developed, that the current way we do it kind of punishes the last person to build on the street, because you've got neighbors that have built, you know, they've built up their lots, and then you're left with a hole, so you're kind of restricted what you can do. You want to get up high enough that you're not taking all their water, but to do that, you're affecting what you can do with the house that you're trying to plan for, you know, for your future. So there's definitely some issues with the way we currently have it. I can see this definitely improving some, but like you said, the concerns of some of the residents that have been required to build to the 35 feet from original grade, you know, they might take issue with, well, you know, I had to do it this way, why do they get to go higher? But I think if we recognize that there is an issue, I don't think just continuing to do it in the method that there is an issue with it makes a whole, you know, makes good sense. If we realize there's a problem, it makes more sense to fix it, I think, than just keep doing it the way it's been done.
Okay. Council. Rob, or any of these gentlemen, this is your chance, because once we go out of the hearing, it's up to us. And let me state, we will not pass this tonight because we are in remote hearing, and that requires 24 hours at the minimum before we can consider the final verdict onto it. So it won't happen tonight, and I don't know how long we'll wait to do it. What?
Couple things. One is the letter from Mrs. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Something. She had asked that it be read into the record.
Oh,
Mark is number 7.
There were two number 7s, Randy's and hers.
which one? Okay, I missed one. Well, I'll take care of that. I'm sorry. Thank you for speaking up. We got off on it's been a busy night. That's all right. All right, so before I go any further, let me do that. You pronounce your name Hiko? Sukir?
It's Heiko, everybody calls him Ike.
Heike, all right. Regarding item 7 on the agenda, I would like to have the following comments read at tonight's meeting. I sincerely hope that approval is given to the text amendment to change measuring maximum building height from finished grade. We are in the process of building a home in Kitty Hawk Landing and have had to discard our house plans once we received notice from the health department regarding the amount of fill required for the septic permit. We had plans for a modest 1.5-story low country home on pilings that has a ridge height of 34 7 inches, which is no longer viable with the 30-inch of the fill required for the septic permit. We have looked at hundreds of plans trying to find one that we can only build that is not a single-story home or a 2-story flat roof home on pilings. A flat roof home is certainly not ideal for our hurricane-prone area, and a single-story would be a very small fit within the setbacks. The amount of fill required by the health department is going to be an ongoing requirement for every lot and every septic permit in Kitty Hawk Landing and all the other low-lying areas in Kitty Hawk. We have hoped to build a new one on Tarkle Ridge with 3 bedrooms and a decent-sized kitchen, but finding it hard to do with the current way the ridge height is considered. Thank you for your consideration. Your address is 4029 Tarkle Ridge Road here in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. I apologize for missing you, but hopefully we've made it right. All right. And we do hear you. And I hope we've made that very clear. Council, do you have any questions for Rob?
No, sir.
Anybody? Do you have any questions of anyone that has spoken? All right. So I'm going to make a motion. We go back, go out of, or go back into regular session.
Second.
Do we have a second? Did you get that, Lynn?
Yes.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. All right. Now, here's the question for us. Do we hold a special session and come back sooner than the next meeting? Or do we hold this in abeyance until the next meeting? I need some thoughts on it, folks.
Mayor, excuse me, this is not a remote meeting. You are allowed to vote tonight if you want.
How come?
This is not a remote meeting. This is a real meeting. This is oh, that's fine. That's fine. It's only remote if one of a council member is on the telephone.
Well, that's a change from what I've been told.
Casey, is that?
Well, and the way we've been doing it is we've kept the doors open, but because of the pandemic, not a lot of people have come in. So I'll say as a courtesy, the way we've been doing things since the pandemic is to hold it open for that 24-hour period. And what Lynn's pointing out is, in reality, we're here. So but again, it's within your discretion, however, to do the special session, to vote tonight, or to hold it in abeyance until the next meeting. All of that is within your discretion because of the precarious circumstances that the pandemic has presented.
But if we do it tonight, we are legal.
Yes, sir.
And okay. If a council member was missing, then it would not be?
That's correct. Then it's considered a remote meeting because we have one council member that's not here. Now, again, if we've got 4, so I guess it would be more accurate to say that if the majority was not
Okay.
present.
All right. Council.
Or if we actually shut the doors. Now, if we shut the doors, yes, then we're going to say, and I dealt with that in KDH where people weren't allowed to come for a while. So, and there were Zoom meetings as well. That would again be another, because they're attending at that point remotely. They're not in the building, but we're not shutting the doors and we are all here. So if you guys want to move forward with this, you can.
All right. The floor is open for a motion.
I'm in favor of moving forward tonight.
Well, then make your motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we move to adopt the proposed text amendment to section 42-1, establishing final grade as the definition of ground elevation, and amending section 12-141, limiting fill amounts on any given lot. Town Council finds that the proposed text amendment is consistent with the adopted Campbell Land Use Plan and finds these amendments to be in the public interest.
Does that have a second?
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. We're open. The floor is open for any discussion. Is there any? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. Gentlemen, go build houses. All right. Now,
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank everybody for coming.
we really do appreciate that, yes. We do have more business, folks. All right, next is up is a letter from the Outer Banks Association of Realtors. Let me get over to that. All right, what we're doing here is the Outer Banks Realtors want us to continue live streaming, basically, and with the phone being able to answer or comment remotely by phone. And based upon their letter to us, they expected a response. I didn't read it that way, but we're going to give them one anyway. So I'd like I'd like to put this into two places. Council, how do you feel about continuing Zooming after the pandemic's over? Jeff?
It doesn't really matter to me. I'm willing to be as open as we can.
All right.
So, if people want it, I'm in favor of it.
I think it's a good thing for those that can't be here in person. I think it's a great
Right.
thing.
I agree with that.
Being accessible is a good thing. The different ways of doing it, you can call in, you can watch from the website, you can watch it later. I think keeping them all is probably the best we can do for everybody.
All right. And Lynn, are you still having trouble when we do the telephone part of it? As far as being able to get it for the record, that sort of thing?
Excuse me. I'll let you know after this meeting, because of the new phone that we have.
All right.
I'll be better able to speak to that.
All right, so that's really the only issue with the phone in. If it works out, do you want to keep it?
Yes, if it works out.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And if it doesn't, then, and the good thing is, if we have somebody wanting to comment and they're going to go over 3 minutes, I can cut them off. As soon as we figure out the phone.
That's right.
All right, good enough. So we're going to do that. Realtors now have an answer. No new business. Well, that was the new business. All right, here we go. Town attorney, you got anything for us?
Want manager first, I think?
Did I miss him? Oh, I did. I turned the page.
Just a couple things. September 14th is the town's large item pickup. As you recall, several years ago, we now pick that up with our bucket truck in-house. And then also just a general announcement, basically what we've seen from the pandemic, and I sent everybody an email this last week, is that a lot of our rental agencies are seeing extended bookings, so we'll be increasing, we'll be continuing our some lifeguarding services after Labor Day, which is usually our last day of lifeguards, a full lifeguarding staff, but we usually drop back to about 2 roaming ATVs after Labor Day for a little while, but now we're gonna go to, I believe, 3 lifeguards now, being that we're gonna have some more tourists and visitors staying a little longer this year. And then also that brings up the other point of, we'll be bringing back before the council a budget amendment in October. I think we're actually probably gonna see a slight increase in some of the revenues that we thought we were gonna lose several months back before we adopted the budget. So we're gonna need to bring that budget back. We have some history now how the pandemic has affected some of those revenues, so we'll be able to bring back a budget that's gonna more clearly reflect the year so far. So we'll have that in October. It'll be done probably through a budget amendment, but I believe that news will be fairly good news compared to what we were thinking about before we adopted the budget. So that's all I have this evening, and if you have any questions or anything,
Anybody?
let me know.
Okay. Now the town attorney.
Nothing for me, man.
Nothing? You talked enough tonight.
Spoke more about it.
Yeah, okay. Town council. Jeff, you want to start?
Well, I was really excited to see the turnout tonight. It was really good just to see the people, and it affects, a great amount of people that they showed up. I guess the squeaky wheel gets oiled. And I'd also like to thank of all of our town staff and employees for getting us through the summer. Like we were saying, it looks like we're going to have some extended time, which is really good. We'll get a break. But I'd like to thank everybody. Once again, our lifeguards, I think this year did a fantastic job of being ambassadors to the vacationers as well as the residents on the Outer Banks. And once again, I'm really happy at the job the chief has done with the fire department and the ocean rescue. Well done.
Very good, Jeff. I agree about the continuation of the lifeguards. I think that's I've only heard positive comments, the roving patrols. Chief Talley, thank you for that. Chief Johnson, thank you for what you're doing. Willie, the town staff here, the town has been through some stressful times in the last couple of months since COVID and a lot of other things going on. I'd just like to thank everyone. You've done a great job. Thanks for what you're doing and keep it up. Thank you.
Lynn?
Echoing what Jeff and Craig have said. Thank you, everybody, and was looking forward to a break in the fall, but we'll get one.
David?
Well, when you get to go last, everything's already been said, so.
Okay,
But
next time I'm gonna pick on you.
Right.
You're gonna wish you didn't say that.
Well, I will say that I'm at a lot of accesses, mainly here recently, the ones that we have lifeguard stands at. And of course, I have a hat on and sunglasses, and I appreciate the way they say hi to everybody that comes. They tell them bye. I saw them yesterday tell a guy to get off the dunes. You can't be walking on the sea oat. So I think they really have, I think it's the best job I've seen in a while this year with everything going on. I don't make it to the beach often, but I have personally watched them space people out and just make everybody aware. So great job. I mean, I really do think so.
Good. All right.
That's it for me.
Well, I'm not going to add anything tonight. I think I've spoken more than I probably needed to. Do we have any public comment before I cut the phone off? Anybody? All right, if any of the news hounds are listening in this way, you lazy bums, then please be aware we're going to go in closed session. I do expect a decision at the end of it, but I don't expect it to be broadcast this way. So if you want to know the end result, you'll have to call the clerk. All right? Okay. I now make a motion to go into closed session to discuss, well, in this case, North Carolina General Statute 143, Tac 318.11, Parent Alpha, Parent 1, approval of the August 3, 2020 closed session minutes. And second, North Carolina General Statute 143.318.11, Parent Alpha, Parent 3, to consult with the town attorney to protect attorney-client privilege. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. We're now in public session, or closed session.